Rodgers, time runs out. Ball is out. It's picked up by the Texans and Sheldon Rankins. And he is in for a touchdown. Here's an interception for good measure. It's picked off by Bullock. And Rodgers is in his way, trying to make the tackle. Can't. And it's a touchdown, Texans. Rodgers' last pass went for a pick six. It is a 30-6 win for the Houston Texans with a dominating defensive performance. The Steelers are finished.
Does that say what I think it says? Wait a minute, can I double check that? Wait.
We're free. We're free. Mike Tomlin is resigned. Ladies and gentlemen, drop the beat, baby. Here we go.
Here we go.
I'm waiting for this day for some time. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on YouTube as well as on Facebook, Twitch, and on X. I am Bryson Carver, and man, I knew I'd be doing a show on the day after the Steelers game after it was announced that it was Steelers-Texans Monday Night Football for the playoff game. I did not necessarily think I'd be coming to you after another blowout Pittsburgh Steelers loss. Under these circumstances, under a sense of joy, like the weight has been lifted off of my shoulders and off every Pittsburgh Steelers fan's shoulders after a decade plus of mediocrity. Thanks everybody for stopping in. Feel free to chime in the comment section. Would love to know what y'all think. This is going to be, not only is it a different show in the sense that we usually do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, in this case, Monday, Tuesday, Friday. Not only is that different, this is basically from start to finish going to be an all Steelers show. Well, obviously, we're going to spend a ton of time on Mike Tomlin. We're going to do a big, long carving up the context as to why he was not even in the same galaxy of the coach he was hyped up to be for a long time. Discuss that. Also get into the Steelers' job, why I think it is absolutely clearly the most attractive job on the market among 9, by the way. Like over a quarter of the league is looking for a new head coach. Why the Steelers had the most attractive head coaching job on the market. And of course, y'all didn't think I was going to go through the show not talk about Aaron Rodgers and the just disaster class he put on tape yesterday, not just on the field, but in classic Aaron Rodgers fashion as it pertains to his leadership. So we've got a ton to get into on today's show. But first, when that game's ending 30-6, and you heard in our intro there, Aaron Rodgers, maybe the final pass of his career, and we'll get to Aaron later. Pick six, 50 yards. It's like that's just kind of a classic Steelers playoff ending. And you can consider the fact that we can now have an updated version of the graphic we've shown for a year. How have the Steelers started in their last 7 playoff games? Put that graphic and roll that beautiful beam footage. 2016, I almost never bring up 2016 because that Patriots team went on to win the Super Bowl against Atlanta, down 36-9. In the AFC Championship game. 2017 at home, down 21-0 to Jacksonville. 2020 down 28-0 at home to the Cleveland Browns. 2021 down 35-7 to the Kansas City Chiefs. 2023 down 21-0 to the Buffalo Bills. Last year, 2024, a team you always play close games with, the Baltimore Ravens. Nope, down 21-0 in this spot. And of course, albeit it got late before it got to this point, but still down 30-6 to the Houston Texans at home. And so I'm thinking, man, I'm going to come into the show today, yell and scream about Tomlin, rip Aaron Rodgers. I'm still going to rip Aaron Rodgers. Don't make no mistake about it. And it's just going to be second verse, same as the first for the Pittsburgh Steelers, until I hear the news. And I'm thinking,
Not so fast, my friends.
Mike Tomlin has resigned as the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers after 19 seasons. He released a statement. Steelers released a statement. He won a Super Bowl there in Pittsburgh in 2008, went to another one in 2010. And this is kind of the perfect opportunity to, first of all, celebrate. We may not have won. Our season might be over, but for the long-term prospects for the Pittsburgh Steelers, folks, it's a black and yellow Tuesday.
Black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow.
Indeed it is. So, with that all being said, we've done plenty of Mike Tomlin carving up the context segments over the last, I'd say, year, maybe a year and a half on the show. Like, yeah, he's a good coach, but he's not like, I mean, people are acting like he's the same galaxy as like an Andy Reid or a Sean McVay or Shanahan or like even the coach he faced yesterday. He doesn't look to be as good of a coach as D'Amico Ryans, who's done a fantastic job in Houston with that defense. But this is an all-encompassing, carving up the context about the career, with respect, the overrated career of Mike Tomlin with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, as the head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes, primetime Deion Sanders says, "Give me my theme music." On this week's edition of Carving Up the Context, wanted to talk about Mike Tomlin's career with the Pittsburgh Steelers, which lasts 19 seasons. We're not going to do like an all-encompassing view of like every single one as far as like the Week 6 game against the Cincinnati Bengals back in 2011 or whatever. Like, we're not going to do that. What we're going to essentially do, what I'm going to essentially do over the next however much time that is in this show and in this video, is look bit by bit at the narratives, the prevailing narratives that have surrounded Mike Tomlin for a long time, and why it was it was almost like swearing on a morning television show to say, you know, maybe the Steelers could go in a different direction. How dare you even dare question the greatness of Mike Tomlin? One of the narratives, I'm sure we sort of teased it in one of the earlier graphics. Mike Tomlin, man, I'll tell you what, he's a motivator. Like that's a guy who has the respect of a locker room. Those guys play their tails off for him. The reports came out of Pittsburgh today. Yeah, the Steelers were pretty irritated that Mike Tomlin made this move, with the organization involved with this, and they wanted to give Mike Tomlin a classy exit. I have no idea. I don't have sources within the organization, so I'm not going to speculate on that. What I do know is this. The motivating coach, again, put up the graphic one more time. This is how they've started in their last 7 playoff games. By the way, they've lost all of them. Last 7 games, 36-9, 21-0, 28-0, 35-7, 21-0, 21-0, and then it got late before it got to this point, but 30-6. So the motivator, Mike Tomlin, team came out flat in 6 of the last 7 playoff games. And in the second half of this game, they got shut out by Houston 23-zip. And also, too, if you look at something that Mike Tomlin is, a list that he's a part of, that people may not think of him being in this discussion. Because you think, hey, Steelers, 3 head coaches since 1969. You've had Chuck Noll, you've had Bill Cowher, you've had Mike Tomlin. 3 coaches since Richard Nixon became president. But when you get down to it, Mike Tomlin was a good. Did Mike Tomlin mess with my mic here? We're back. Mike Tomlin was a good coach who, by and large, underachieved with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's show this graphic. The longest losing streaks in NFL history for head coaches. Put that graphic up, because Tomlin has lost more games in a row than any coach in history outside of Marvin Lewis, who he is tied with. For those that are listening to the show, Steve Owen with the New York Giants back in the day, 1939, 1950. We're going well, pre-Super Bowl era. He lost 6 in a row. So did Jim Morris Sr. Playoffs? Well, I guess it's reflected in his record, right? Marty Schottenheimer, great offensive mind, but Marty Schottenheimer, God rest his soul, was notorious for his teams coming up short in the playoffs. He lost 6 consecutive games, with the Chiefs, Chargers. And then you look at Mike Tomlin and Marvin Lewis. Marvin Lewis, we thought for years, pretty good coach, but man, the Bengals always melt in the playoffs. And, Tomlin's lost just as many games in a row in the postseason as that guy. And if you look at the last 9 years in which the Pittsburgh Steelers have gone without a playoff win, we've updated this graphic as well that we've shown for the last year on the show. Teams that have won a playoff game more recently than the Pittsburgh Steelers, it's almost the entire NFL. Chiefs, 17. Eagles, we're talking about playoff wins. Chiefs have won 17. Eagles, 10. Niners, 10. Patriots, Rams, and Bills, 8. Buccaneers, 6. The Bengals, 5. Texans after last night, 4. Saints, Jaguars, Packers, Ravens, Titans, 3. Commanders, Cowboys, Falcons, Vikings, and Lions have won 2. And then the following teams, the Browns, who did it against you, by the way, the New York Football Giants, the Chargers, the Colts, the Seahawks, and now as of Saturday night, the Chicago Bears. All of those teams have won a playoff game more recently than one Mike Tomlin. And by the way, it also extends because the Steelers Steelers gave up 30 points in part because of Aaron Rodgers. This is now a situation where Tomlin can't win shootouts. Tomlin cannot win games. And no coach's record is great. When his team gives up 30 points, but with Tomlin's, it's even worse. When the Steelers allow 30 or more points, they're 7-46. Since Big Ben retired, it's 1-13. Since the 2017 playoff loss to Jacksonville, which is the first year that the Steelers went on the streak without winning a playoff game in a season, 1-23 when the opponent scores 30 points. For context, it says carving up the context, that win came in week 1 of this season against the god-awful New York Football Jets, in which you needed a stop at the end. You needed Aaron Rodgers and Chris Boswell to come up clutch in week 1 to beat the Jets on the road. Speaking of that defense, by the way, right? Like, that's one thing I hear too. Mike Tomlin, I'll give you, he doesn't value offense, doesn't really value the quarterback position that much. More on this later. But I'll tell you what, that's a defensive guy. That is a defensive coach that, interesting. The Steelers for 5 years in a row have been the highest paid defense in football. Why don't we look and see where they ranked in the last 5 years? Because they've never been in the top 10. So they've invested on that side of the ball since 2021 through 2025, when they were the highest ranked defense in the league, or highest paid defensive league. 24th, 13th, 21st, 12th, and this year, highest paid defense in football. TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, you brought in Jalen Ramsey, you got all these guys. 26th ranked defense in football. Worst fourth quarter defense in the entire league this season. On average, gave up 10 points a game in the fourth quarter of the season. By far the worst in the NFL. I think I could be wrong on this, but Doug Clawson, I hope I'm not misquoting, he put a stat on social media that it's like the worst among playoff teams in NFL history, giving up over 10 points per fourth quarter. So, no, Tomlin's not a good defensive coach. But you say, well, just still, the non-losing season. Man, to go 19 straight years, and not one time, you didn't even go 7-9. Maybe you didn't. You had a slew of injuries. You slipped into 6-10, or the Mike Tomlin era, as long as it was 19 years, it can be divided in 3 separate eras. And we'll show you that graphic and what those eras look like. So the first one, when he took the job, 2007, he was the defensive coordinator for the Vikings, was a young coach, 34 years old at the time, 2007 to 2010, 43-21, and he was 5-2 in the playoffs. The second era, 2011 to 2016, they're a 60-36 record, 3-4 record in the postseason. And then this most recent era, the last era of the Mike Tomlin era in Pittsburgh, 2017 through 2025, 90-57 record, 0-6 in the postseason. What do I mean when I say you can divide it into eras, so to speak? We'll go through as quick of a go through it at these 19 years we possibly can. So 2007, wild card team lost. That was the first year of the Tomlin era in Pittsburgh. Not going to hold against him. Year 2, won the Super Bowl. Year 2, you went through, I know you went through Baltimore in the AFC Championship. I think was it Chargers? Yeah, Chargers, Ravens. That was the Palomalu pick 6 in the AFC Championship game. And then won, in my opinion, one of the greatest Super Bowls ever over the Arizona Cardinals. Santonio Holmes, Steelers fans, James Harrison. They all remember that play. Or those plays, rather. Next year, missed the playoffs. Okay. Next year, make another Super Bowl. You come back on the Ravens. You beat the Jets in the AFC Championship game. And then in the Super Bowl, Aaron Rodgers goes nuts. The greatest playoff game Aaron Rodgers ever had. It's this one shining moment. Again, much more on Aaron Rodgers later in the show. That's the first Tomlin era. So it's like, oh gosh, 5 playoff wins. You got into a couple Super Bowls in 4 years. Not too shabby. And then the second era, because keep in mind too, Mike Tomlin took over for Bill Cowher, right? Mike Tomlin inherited a team that just 2 years prior to his hiring had won a Super Bowl. 3 years rather prior to his hiring, got their franchise quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger. So as the Cowher era sort of fades and it gets into Tomlin's own time as being the Steelers head coach with no shadow of Cowher, 2011 to 2016. What happened in those years? What happened in Big Ben Roethlisberger's prime years of his career? How did the Steelers do? Well, I'll tell you how they did. In 2011, they had the best defense in the NFL. Best pass defense, best overall defense, and best scoring in defense. And they gave up 29 points and lost to Tim Tebow, the guy who legitimately could not throw a 4 pass on a consistent basis. Threw for over 300 yards, multiple touchdowns, and the Broncos hung 29. The 8-8 Broncos, by the way, hung 29 in the Steelers. 2012, 8-8, losing record in 1-score games, missed the playoffs. 2013, 8-8, started 0-4 that season, missed the playoffs. 2014, you're back in the playoffs, win the division, and you get blown up by double digits at home against your arch rival Baltimore Ravens. So that's 4 years of wasting Big Ben's prime. 2015, 10-6. You snuck into the playoffs thanks to a New York Jets collapse in Week 17. Sorry to remind Jets fans of that loss against Buffalo. Back in the day, Week 17. You sneak in as the 6th seed. It takes Cincinnati, Jeremy Hill, Vontaze Burfict, and Pac-Man Jones literally imploding to lose that game. The Cincinnati Bengals losing that game to Pittsburgh, and then you go on the road in Denver and lose to the eventual champion Broncos. 2016, Steelers win the division again. They beat Matt Moore and the Dolphins in the first round. They beat the Alex Smith Kansas City Chiefs in the division round. That's the last playoff win at this point, was against those Chiefs. Did not score a touchdown in the process against a bad Chiefs defense, and then get blown out by the Patriots in the AFC Championship game. That's the second Tomlin era. So the first one's like, man, you're winning a Super Bowl. You're going another one, deep playoff runs. The second era, you had one deep playoff run, 2016, but kind of some head-scratching losses to Denver and Baltimore and some missed playoffs in there with Ben in his prime. And the last era is the most damning. 2017, the Steelers went 13-3, had the 2 seed in the AFC, got the privilege of facing the Jacksonville Jaguars when they were coming off a bye. The Steelers coming off the bye, facing the Jaguars, who had just scored 10 points the previous wild card win against Buffalo. The Steelers gave up 45 and lost to Blake Bortles. In 2018, the Pittsburgh Steelers started, if I'm getting this correct, 7-2-1. They lost 4 of 6 to miss the playoffs. 2019, and folks, this to me is the turning point of the franchise. This to me is where everything flipped in the opposite direction for Pittsburgh. Big Ben was not getting any younger. Week 2 against the Seattle Seahawks, blows out his elbow. He's done for the season. Steelers are 0-2. Then they lose another game. They're 0-3. So at that point, it's like, oh, gosh, okay, Ben's gone. We have no chance whatsoever to contend. The Ravens, that was Lamar's first full year as a starter when he won MVP. Like, we're not catching them. This is a down year, lean year, rebuild year. Hey, fans trust Tomlin. Fans trust the front office. We can have a down year. It happens in the NFL. All right, nobody's perfect. And Mike Tomlin, and you cannot convince me otherwise, in order to preserve the non-losing season, gives up the 2020 first-round pick the Steelers would have had for Minkah Fitzpatrick. By the way, an excellent player. An excellent player. Was a great leader in that locker room for Pittsburgh. Pro Bowl caliber guy. Minkah was fantastic in Pittsburgh. Did you know that following draft, by the way, the Steelers finished 8-8. So they got that non-losing record, right? Missed the playoffs. That next draft featured Joe Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Herbert, Jordan Love, and Jalen Hurts. The last of those two, Love and Hurts, you know who drafted them? Well, we know who drafted them, the Packers and the Eagles. You know what those teams had in common with the Steelers? They already had a quarterback in place. Packers still had prime Aaron Rodgers, and the Eagles had Carson Wentz, 2 years removed from being an MVP contention. And the Steelers had an older Big Ben. And they said, you know what, we're going to prioritize the future. The Eagles, it was more of a backup plan for Wentz. The Packers, it was, we're preparing for the future post-Rodgers. I think it's safe to say Love has played quite well. And, Jalen Hurts says, all he's done is gone to 2 Super Bowls and won a Super Bowl MVP. So what happens in 2020? Big Ben comes back, and the Steelers start 11-0. They lose 5 of 6 and get blown out by the Cleveland Browns at home. When the Browns didn't have Kevin Stefanski because he was out due to COVID. In 2021, you barely sneak in the playoffs because the Chargers and Raiders almost tied and you almost missed it, and you get blasted by Kansas City. 2022, what happens? You draft a low upside quarterback in Kenny Pickett. You go, hey, 9-8. You went on a 5-game winning streak. Preserve that non-losing record. I mean, just hang the banner at Acrisure Stadium for crying out loud. Missed the playoffs. 2023, made the playoffs 10-7. Blasted in the first round by Buffalo. Last year, started 10-3. It's like, man, could the Steelers get the 1 seed? 5-game losing streak to end the year and a blowout loss on the road against the Baltimore Ravens. And this year, you go all in for Aaron Rodgers, Jalen Ramsey, you bring in Jonnu Smith, DK Metcalf. Man, we're going for it. It's Super Bowl or bust, baby. And you score 6 points at home on extra rest in a playoff game against the Houston Texans. That is the Mike Tomlin era in a nutshell. And I know what some of you are saying, man, Bryson, I mean, come on. That last Tomlin era, it was either old Big Ben or it was Mason Rudolph, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, and older Aaron Rodgers. I mean, you can't hold them to too high of a standard. I mean, are you really expecting them to just go nuts in the playoffs, or to even win a playoff game, or to be competitive in a playoff game? That's not fair. Look how bad or how mediocre some of those quarterbacks are. Okay. Did you know since the Pittsburgh Steelers' last playoff win, which came, by the way, when Barack Obama was still president, think how long ago that was. Did you know in that span, Blake Bortles beat Ben Roethlisberger, Case Keenum beat Drew Brees, Nick Foles beat Tom Brady, Ryan Tannehill beat Tom Brady and Lamar Jackson, Jimmy Garoppolo beat Aaron Rodgers twice. Also in that span, Blake Bortles almost beat Brady, Skylar Thompson almost beat Josh Allen, Tyler Huntley almost beat Joe Burrow, and just last week, Bryce Young almost beat Matthew Stafford. This idea that, I mean, if you don't have a quarterback, you can't even be competitive. You're just going to get shellacked in the playoffs year after year. I'm not asking you to go on a deep run, but some of these guys were going to AFC Championship games. I mean, look at what the 49ers were able to do in the Garoppolo, a guy who would, in some cases, throw 8 passes. Why? They built the running game. They invest in the offensive line. They believe in having a great defense, but it wasn't their entire MO. And if it was, I'm sure they would have done a better job than Mike Tomlin has with the Steelers defense, which, again, has never been top 10 in the last 5 years, despite being the highest paid defense in football. Something else. The whole thing, Tomlin doesn't have a quarterback. I thought, and we'll get to him later, wasn't Aaron Rodgers supposed to fix that? That was the whole thing, man. You're waiting for Aaron Rodgers for 3 months after the offseason starts to sign with you in June. Missing OTA, so getting a late start with working out with some of the Steelers' weapons like DK Metcalf, Calvin Austin, and others. Wasn't he supposed to fix all that? And by the way, a lot of that blame goes on Aaron. We'll get to him later. Yeah, you believed in the guy who went 5-12 the year prior. Like, yeah, I'm sure that's gonna fix everything. Something else about Tomlin. The mark of any great coach, let me back up. The mark of any great leader. The people that work underneath you or follow you, wherever the case may be, once they go off, once the birds leave the nest, so to speak, how do they fare? Mike Tomlin's coaching tree is non-existent. It's basically Bruce Arians, who won a Super Bowl in Tampa, coached the year multiple times. That's it. You look at some of his previous defensive coordinators, some of his offensive coordinator hires since Arians have been utterly abysmal. The one that was good, Todd Haley, he ran out of the building because of an ego issue. And if you look at some of his contemporaries, Tomlin's contemporaries in their coaching tree, Andy Reid is the same. Listen, Andy Reid, who comes from the homegrown coaching tree, like the homegrown coaching tree is one of the best in NFL history, if not the best, certainly in modern history. Andy Reid's coaching tree features the likes of Sean McDermott, John Harbaugh, Doug Peterson, Matt Nagy, who did win a Coach of the Year for what it's worth, Ron Rivera, and Todd Bowles. Sean McVay, at least has Dan Campbell. That's worked out okay for Detroit. Pete Carroll, said Dan Quinn and Dave Canales. Those guys have been good. Sean McVay, who's like 20 years younger, or maybe not 20, 15 years younger than Mike Tomlin. Here's his coaching tree. Kevin O'Connell, Liam Cohen, Matt LaFleur, Zach Taylor. Is he 40 yet? Is McVay 40 yet? Already a better coaching tree than Tomlin has had in 2 decades. So he didn't make the people around him better. Very similar to what I used to say for years about Belichick. Like, why is Belichick's coaching tree terrible? Like, if Bill O'Brien is your best assistant, gone head coach, like that's a problem. Andy Reid makes guys better. So does, Pete Carroll, McVay, Shanahan. DeMeco Ryans came from Kyle Shanahan's coaching tree. He's the defensive coordinator in San Francisco before he got the Houston job. Not the case with Mike Tomlin. So with all of those things being considered, well, Bryson still. The resume is what the resume is. He won, 190 games, Super Bowl champion, went to another Super Bowl. Like, you'll at least have to concede Mike Tomlin's a Hall of Famer. I don't know that. Now, I think he'll probably get in. It'll be a travesty if he gets in the first ballot, but I think he'll get in. I won't be up in arms about it. What I am telling you is it is an argument if Mike Tomlin should get a gold jacket or not. We like to play a game on the show many, many times throughout the year. That looks familiar. It's basically our version of blind resume. Go and put up the blind resume. So here's Mike Tomlin's resume, and there's mystery coach. So Tomlin, one more season, one more playoff appearance, same amount of division titles, a little bit better winning percentage, far worse playoff record to this guy. Would you like to guess at who the coach on the right is? And see if you think Mike Tomlin, whose resume is identical to this guy. See now if you think Mike Tomlin's a Hall of Famer. Can we go and put up that coach? Mike McCarthy. Yep. Better playoff record. Same amount of division titles despite one less season. Only one fewer playoff appearance, again, in one less season. Anyone considering Mike McCarthy, anyone fitting Mike McCarthy for a golden jacket in Canton, Ohio anytime soon? Like, I've always said, I think McCarthy's a pretty good coach. Like, he's won 12 games multiple times in Green Bay and Dallas. Like, he's been okay. Mike Tomlin's resume is identical to Mike McCarthy. And if nothing else, and we'll get to the Steelers' coaching candidates in a few minutes. Moving on, or they didn't move on from Mike Tomlin. They may have, and they may have given Tomlin the out to say, hey, we'll let you be able to leave on your own terms, so to speak, which I agree with. That's a classy move of the organization. I respect it. But Mike Tomlin's exit also signifies and puts to an end the idea of you can be a Super Bowl contender playing 2005 football, and you just can't. Heck, I would argue Tomlin himself never won in that regard. Yeah, those Steelers defenses early on were excellent, but he had Big Ben. He had some excellent offenses. And as time went on, as offenses evolved, wasn't quite as productive, was he? Was getting blown out. Not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times, not 5 times, not 6 times, 7 times in a row in the postseason. Longest losing streak of any coach in the history of the NFL in the playoffs. So on this week's edition of Carving Up the Context, not only was it time, folks, it's been time. It's been time for the Pittsburgh Steelers and Mike Tomlin to part ways. For the record, all the reporting, Schefter was the first on this. Tomlin probably takes a year off, goes into television, and he will almost certainly get a head job in 2027. By the way, he's earned that right. You're telling me of some of the candidates out there that Mike Tomlin's not better than any of them? Sure he is. Of course he is. He's not a bad coach. He's just not this, top 5 easily in the NFL. The standard is the standard. No losing seasons. What do they have to show for that? No one cares about that. The record for non-losing seasons in a row is Tom Landry. Does anybody talk about that? Am I the first person to tell you that Tom Landry has the all-time record for consecutive non-losing seasons? Because people think Tom Landry, they think about the fedora. They think about some of those doomsday defenses in Dallas and America's team and Staubach, and they don't think, he went the most seasons in a row without sucking. Sometimes you need to suck. Sometimes you need to bottom out. And I'll get to that with the Steelers head coaching candidates in a moment. But yes, I am overjoyed by the Steelers moving on and the Steelers and Mike Tomlin moving on from one another. This was a good thing for Tomlin. This was a good thing for the Steelers objectively. So in this week's edition of Carving Up the Context, lengthy version, but still, I'm a very, very happy Pittsburgh Steelers fan today. And to the Houston Texans, thank y'all for doing what you did to us last night, because maybe this was the straw that broke the camel's back. Let me get to the comments. I see my good friend, Alfred Parsard Jr. Shocked you're not yelling and screaming. Alfred, I would have been, and by the way, I still might with Aaron Rodgers. Your guy. Alfred loves Aaron, okay? So I will let Aaron hear in probably 10 to 15 minutes. I probably would have been yelling and screaming for an hour straight, but that news that broke around 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, that made my day a lot better, to say the very least. You prayed, this is from Alfred, you prayed and wished Mike Tomlin at Pittsburgh. By the way, check out the Metropolitan Report. Alfred does a fantastic job covering the Mets. Alfred's a dear friend of mine, does a great job at the show, had a big season in 2025. More things to come for you, brother, in 2026. He says, you prayed and wished Mike Tomlin at Pittsburgh. Oh, yes, I did. I firmly believe had Tomlin kept going, he would have beaten Tom Landry's record of consecutive winning seasons. And Steelers kept it close till Rodgers fumbled and it got ran back for a touchdown. He says, I can't bash Tomlin, can't say he underachieved and won a ring, never had a losing season. Again, the ring came from a roster that he inherited. That's not to say he doesn't deserve credit for the job that he did with that team, but this very much feels like a John Gruden inheriting Tony Dungy's Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That was Dungy's Bucs. That was the roster he constructed. Kudos to Gruden for getting the job done, but Dungy was part of that process. Cowher was part of the process at putting almost the entirety of the Steelers roster together that did win Super Bowl. I guess it was Super Bowl 43 in Tampa against the Arizona Cardinals back in 2008. So yeah, with those rosters, I mean, again, the second Tomlin era is almost as bad as the last. He went 6 seasons with prime Big Ben Roethlisberger, and he won 2 playoff games. Those playoff wins, by the way, came against Matt Moore and Alex Smith. The man just won the division. Yeah, it was the second worst division of football. Like, I'm not gonna go crazy about that. To be fair, this is from Alfred. To be fair, Big Ben was out of his prime. He had an out of his prime Russell Wilson, Mason Rudolph, and out of his prime Rodgers. Give him a break. No coach who is bad has ever kept 9 consecutive seasons. Coaches get clipped for much less these days. Tomlin is going to the Hall. Thanks for the Jets reminder. Yeah, I apologize for that. Rodgers went 5-12 in the Jets last year prior, but his numbers were solid. And on top of that, he wasn't the problem there and just won you the division. Again, I'm going to save my Rodgers commentary for about 10 minutes from now because I don't want that to necessarily be part of the Tomlin discussion, although it was Tomlin who did bring Aaron to Pittsburgh. Most empty numbers I've ever seen in my life watching the NFL, and I've done statistical breakdowns and game-by-game breakdowns of Aaron and some of the numerous close games at the end where he made the losing play, whether it was picks, fumbles, what have you. Got another comment from KIZK100. Love Tomlin. Sad to see him go. Is this the end of an era for better or for worse? And Alfred says, but Tom Landry's arguably the greatest coach in NFL history. I mean, you can make that case, but again, that's not the first thing we think of. Even with Tomlin. And this to me is an indictment. You think about the non-losing seasons more than you think about the Super Bowl. No coach in NFL history has a funky record. Again, if there were something to show for that, it's kind of like when the Patriots had that insane streak of winning the AFC East. It's like, yeah, they're winning the AFC East and getting to Super Bowls or worst case AFC championship games. Now, again, that's Tom Brady. But that record meant something. That stretch where New England was running the sport, that meant something. Kansas City was on the doorstep of breaking that record prior to this year. Yeah, they won 3 Super Bowls and went to 2 more. You can't get a single, get a single playoff win. Can you be competitive in one of them? The one that you gave up 45 to Blake Bortles. And again, as I said earlier, this idea, oh man, the coach, or not the quarterback play is bad. Again, I want to go over this list one more time. Since Tomlin last won a playoff game, Blake Bortles beat Big Ben. Case Keenum beat Drew Brees. Nick Foles beat Tom Brady. Ryan Tannehill beat both Brady and Lamar Jackson. Jimmy G beat Aaron Rodgers twice. Also, Bortles almost beat Brady. Skylar Thompson almost beat Josh Allen. Tyler Huntley almost beat Joe Burrow. And Bryce Young almost beat Matthew Stafford. I'm not asking you to go to the bowl. Could you win one in a decade? Could you not have, I don't know, the longest losing streak in the history of the NFL for coaches in the playoffs? Can he not be tied with a certified playoff joker, Marvin Lewis? Is that too much to ask? He says the Carve Master, that's the nickname he gave me. I appreciate that. The Carve Master is a harsh critic. Listen, I'm calling balls and strikes here. I just this not deification, but this overinflation of Tomlin's resume is driven me crazy for a while. When you watch the game, it's like, guys, bad situationally. He's way too conservative on 4th downs. Last 2 games are kind of an exception to that, but again, they're do or die games. Way too conservative on 4th down. The defense has been bad for a half decade straight, despite being the highest paid defense in the league. I mean, there were 12 reasons to move on from this guy. And again, I'm glad that he resigned. Honest to God, I'm glad he resigned as opposed to the Steelers firing him. But this is the last bite we'll play, and then we'll take a break and talk about Steelers head coaching candidates. But I've saved this soundbite from about a month and a half ago. James Harrison, the great James Harrison, one of the greatest Steelers defensive players of the last 25, 30 years. Had the iconic play in that Super Bowl. With respect to Santonio Holmes, I actually think James Harrison should have been Super Bowl MVP against the Cardinals. He had a 14-point play. Saved a touchdown and then ran one back in the same play. Regardless. James Harrison played under this guy for a long time. His definition of what a great coach is, this is from about a month and a half ago on his podcast with Joe Hayden. Take a listen to James Harrison.
And as much as I hate to say this, I have never been a person that thought Coach Tomlin was a great coach. A good coach gets you to play to your potential. And right now, the players we have on that team, I have seen play. I know they can do it.
Mhm.
I have seen them do it, and they're not playing up to their potential. And a great coach gets you to play beyond your potential.
Mhm.
And I know the Steelers historically don't move on from coaches. But I think it's time that history be made.
Now, history was not made in that regard because they didn't fire him. And again, I'm glad that wasn't the case. If there were any ways for Mike Tomlin to part with the Steelers, this would have been my number one choice. He leaves on his own volition, and he's going to be exceptionally successful in television. I mean, look at Bill Cowher's predecessor. Bill Cowher's been great for CBS for 20 years. He can be successful on television and or go to another culture. And again, sometimes it's okay for a coach in a well-run franchise to part ways. Look at Andy Reid and the Eagles. Honestly, look at Andy Reid and the Eagles. Both parties have been great for the long run because of that split. If Andy Reid had still been in Philly, I'm not sure they have a ring by now. Honestly, I really don't. Eventually, a voice runs hollow. So there you go. And by the way, people saying, oh, the Steelers didn't have talent. I mean, just last year, they were tied for second in Pro Bowlers. Like, they've had stacked rosters and have underachieved. We're going to take a 1-minute break on Carve Up Live. Again, this is an all Pittsburgh Steelers show. Spent the first half hour dissecting Mike Tomlin's coaching career. When we come back, potential candidates for the Steelers, why I think it is absolutely among the 9 jobs available, why it is absolutely the best job on the market. And then we will talk about Aaron Rodgers because there's a lot to say about last night, about this season, and about the last few years about this particular player. Talk about all that in just 1 minute on Carving Up Live. Don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Carving Up Live. Appreciate everybody for stopping by on this special Tuesday show, which, again, we're not just doing because of the Tomlin news. Once I saw after the Sunday night crazy win against Baltimore last week that Steelers Texans would get me on Monday Night Football, I'm like, oh, I'm not going to wait till Wednesday's show to talk about whatever happens. I'm not waiting till Wednesday. I got to do it the very next night on the show. So appreciate everybody for stopping by today. Do have a few comments from my guy, Grady Edwards. Shout out to Grady. He says, Tomlin is a really good coach, in my opinion. Hall of Famer as well. You're a bit harsh on him, understandably, because of the last few years. His legacy in Pittsburgh will age quite favorably, in my opinion. Tomlin, in a lot of ways, is George Seifert without the Carolina Panthers stint, but a better version of that. Let's go back to your first comment, Grady, because none of what I've said is to say Mike Tomlin is a bad head coach. Like, a bad head coach is Brandon Staley, like a guy who was just in over his head, like Freddie Kitchens. I mean, like, those guys were awful head coaches. Mike Tomlin's nowhere near that discussion. But he's kind of in that, yeah, he's a good coach. Like, yeah, if there's a job opening and the top 2 coordinators are gone, you hire him. Mike McCarthy. He's won. He's got a ring on his finger. Ironically, Tomlin and McCarthy actually faced each other in a Super Bowl way back when in 2010. Tomlin is the defensive version of McCarthy. They're the same guy, same resume. I mean, go and put up the list one more time. Like, it's identical. I'll have to remove Grady's comment. Here you go. I mean, again, 19 seasons, 18 seasons, 13 playoff appearances, 12 playoff appearances for McCarthy. Same amount of division titles. Win percentage has, Tomlin's in the driver's seat on that, but McCarthy's in the driver's seat in terms of playoff record. Like, that's the reality of it. So, and something else too, if I can bring this up. Hold on. Okay, honestly, I think I forgot what I was. Oh, no. Oh, that's right. Shout out to Johnny. It was on the JV. If you haven't checked out the JV show, check his stuff out. Really, really good stuff. I was on his show. He was very kind to have me on last night after the Steelers game. And, one of the things I said to him, and I said it on Instagram immediately after the game, for those that say the Steelers should have brought Tomlin back, my question to you, and this is what I would have said had the Steelers not moved on from Tomlin, or had they, I keep saying that, they parted ways. My question would have been, for those that think Tomlin should have come back, what about next year leads you to believe, or what about this coach would lead you to believe that next year was going to be any different from the last 9? What? I mean, what scenario could come to place where it's, okay, yeah, it's probably time to move on? Like, do they have to have that first non-losing, or do they have to have that first losing season? Is that what's going to take? Because again, what has he accomplished in the stretch since 2011, since that playoff loss to Tebow? He's won twice in the playoffs. So we talk about no playoff wins in 9 years, 2 playoff wins in the last 15 years. This is the Pittsburgh Steelers we're talking about. This is just the franchise with 6 Super Bowls, tied with New England for the most. Are you trying to get to banner number 7 at Acrisure Stadium? Or are you just trying to keep a streak that, let's be honest, no one really cares about going? Sometimes it's okay to... Prime example. Look at the New England Patriots. Greatest dynasty in league history for 20 years. Brady gets forced out. A couple of rough years. Belichick, in my opinion, kind of got exposed a little bit. The Mac Jones years. Then you bring in Gerard Mayo, and that's a disaster. But you got this young quarterback in Drake May you like. You bring in a good coach in Vrabel. Look at New England now. Look at how Elliott Wolf's done a good job in the draft. They built a good receiving core. They've built a good defense over the last couple of years. It's okay to bottom out and get a top 5 pick. It really, really is. I mean, the last time the Steelers have a number 1 overall pick, it took Terry Bradshaw. That's how long it's been. It's okay to bottom out. And that leads me to the coaching search. That's the next question. Well, who's going to be the next guy in Pittsburgh? As we all know, 3 head coaches since 1969, which is insane. To me, before I get to the candidates that I would like to see, I want to say first and foremost, there are 9 coaching jobs available as we sit here today. They are Titans, Falcons, Cardinals, Dolphins, Browns, Raiders, Giants, Ravens, Steelers. Of those 9 jobs, it's over a quarter of the league is looking for a new head coach. Of those 9 jobs, the Steelers is the best job, unequivocally. Now, you can make a case for the Ravens because it's like, they have Lamar Jackson. Like, you don't just inherit MVP quarterbacks when you become a head coach. Kind of like Matt LaFleur did with Aaron Rodgers with the Green Bay Packers in 2019. In the case of the Giants, young, talented quarterback in Dart. In the case of the Vegas Raiders, number 1 overall pick in the draft, probably going to get Fernando Mendoza. And some of these other jobs, it's Titans, young, talented quarterback in Cam Ward. The easiest, or at least the simplest reason why the Steelers is the best job is something that we've known our whole lives watching football. You have the greatest job security of any job in all of pro sports. I mean, again, Chuck Noll was there for, was it 23 years, 24 years? Cowher was there for about 15, and Tomlin there for 19. Like, the job security is, and listen, Cowher had some lean years. They made that Super Bowl back in 95 and they lost the Cowboys. Didn't make another one until 2005 when they beat Seattle in Super Bowl 40. They had a couple rough years in there. They were still loyal. The Rooney family, for better or for worse, has been loyal to their coaches. So if you come into Pittsburgh, I've got a bomb. I mean, it's got to be like, 10 or 11 wins in 3 seasons type of thing for it to get fired. Where fans can see, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. This is Brandon Staley, Freddie Kitchens. I love this guy. But Gerard Mayo, it's they're just in over their head. They don't know what they're doing. It will take that for the Steelers to have a quick trigger on moving on from the next head coach. So that in and of itself, I've got job security for at least a half decade, at least. Here's the second reason. And what I'm crossing my fingers and kind of waiting and seeing if the Steelers go this route. Because this is what I would do if I were the GM of the team. And then I'll get to the coaching candidates. Whoever the heck next head coach is, you bring them in the room and say, you know what? Welcome to the Steelers. This year, we might have the worst roster in football. Why is that? we're going to tear everything down. TJ Watt, maybe the greatest pass rusher in Steelers history, certainly since, the likes of Jack Lambert. Move him while here. There's still value. I love TJ Watt. I've got his jersey. Love TJ Watt. The Steelers have not won a single playoff game with him. That's not to say that's his fault. That's to say the Steelers have wasted him. One of the best pass rushers in football. In my opinion, outside of Myles Garrett, the best pass rusher in the league since he came in 2017. You've accomplished nothing with him. Move him. Trust me, plenty of teams will take a pass rusher. San Francisco might take him. Who knows? You move on. God bless him. If you want to keep him for veteran presence, I wouldn't have a problem with keeping Cam Hayward because he's about to retire anyway. You definitely move Jalen Ramsey, who's kind of damaged goods at this point. You can just kind of get what you can get for Jalen Ramsey. And in my opinion, I think they should move DK Metcalf. Because DK Metcalf, it will sort of be this a little bit of a Mike Tomlin cloud in the sense of, that's one thing I didn't mention earlier about Tomlin. Man, he had a tendency of putting up with some pretty high drama receivers. I mean, you can just go down the list. Antonio Brown, Chase Claypool, DK Metcalf, George Pickens. I mean, just go up and down the list. Deontay Johnson. DK Metcalf almost cost the Steelers their season before they got into the playoffs with the incident in Detroit. Couldn't keep his temper. Seattle Seahawks fans know that was an issue there. This can be a high-character organization. Yeah, we can put up with personalities, but not to where you're actually costing us games. That's why the Steelers moved on from George Pickens. Basically, move your 4 best players. And when you do, you will be one of the worst teams in the NFL. What I would do, unless, because I'm not crazy about this quarterback draft aside from Fernando Mendoza, we don't even know if Dante Moore is going to be in the draft because he may not want to go to the Jets. Unless the Steelers have a guy, because they're going to have a mid-first round pick that they just love. Or if second round pick, like Philly took Jalen Hurts in the second round. If like a Trinidad Chambliss kind of falls a little bit, it's like, God, we kind of like this kid. We like what he brings to the table. Okay, bringing in a guy like Trinidad Chambliss. Because I'm not a big believer in Ty Simpson. But if they're in love with the guy, this draft, take him. Take your quarterback. If not, let's see if this kid, late round pick last year, Will Howard, let's see what he's got. I'm not really a believer. I think Will Howard was a product of having the most talented wide receiver I've ever seen in college football, Jeremiah Smith. But let's see what he has. Frankly, I wish that's what we would have done in the second half of this year. Start Mason Rudolph, then go to Will Howard. See what the kid has next year, and there's a good chance you'll win 3 or 4 or 5 games at most. Then you have a high pick for 2027. Then you get your guy. Well, Bryson, the fans will get mad at, will they? Ask yourself, Steelers fans, and I think I would understand the answer that I get here. Would you rather be bad short term for the optimism of being good in the future, or yeah, we would be much better than that with Tomlin and with the current guys in this roster, but we have a prayer's chance of being a contender, which has been the case for 15 years in Pittsburgh. And again, that coach, unless he's totally in over his head, the ultimate job security. 3 coaches since 1969. So you're set. You're good. You can move your family to Pittsburgh. If you got kids, set them up in a public school. Like, you're going to be there for a while. So that's why I think it's the best job in the NFL. So who would I like to take that job? There are 2 names that come to the top of my list. I'll go to the second place guy and the first place guy. The second place guy is Brian Flores, the current defensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins. Brian Flores, who, by the way, actually was on the Steelers coaching staff back in 2022 after the Dolphins moved off from him. This is a guy who, again, I tend to be like, on Belichick guys, but this is one of the few that actually showed some promise. This guy took over the worst situation in the NFL, which the Miami Dolphins were in 2019. They had one of the worst rosters in football. And by year 2, year 3, like, God, they could be a playoff team. And let's be honest, he was right on Tua Tagovailoa. Mike McDaniel got the most he could out of him because Mike McDaniel's a really smart offensive coach, but Tua's pretty limited, and Flores was right in wanting Justin Herbert. So I already trust his judgment. I trust the fact that, yeah, it didn't really work in Miami, but A, Miami's poorly run, and B, you learn from your mistakes. Jason Kidd, didn't do well with the Nets, bombed in Milwaukee, did a pretty good job in Dallas in the NBA. I could see a very similar situation happening with Brian Flores. If the Steelers want to maintain the defensive culture, it's not something I love necessarily, but if you're going to, that's the guy I'd go to. That's a guy who, to me, can put together a good staff. with the resources that the Pittsburgh Steelers have. That's a guy who can continue the tradition of having actually great Steelers defenses and not the 26th ranked defense in 2025 and not top 10 for the last 5 years. I like the idea a lot, just as to play with this idea. Maybe bring in Mike McDaniel if he doesn't get a head job to be your OC. Hey, I love that. Brian Flores, Mike McDaniel, there for the long haul, or not McDaniel because he'll be a coordinator, but there for the next couple of years to develop whatever young quarterback you take and believe in. And by the way, it's not like you can't be successful as an defensive coach. Look what D'Amico Ryan's doing in Houston. Look at Mike McDonald in Seattle, Mike Vrabel in New England. It's a little trickier with maintaining a smart offensive mind because it's an offensive league these days. But you can win 12-plus games and be a legit Super Bowl contender with a defensive guy, 100%. You absolutely can be. You can't be with an old-school defensive guy like Mike Tomlin or Pete Carroll. You can be with the Brian Flores, potentially. That would be my second choice for the job. If it comes out in 3 days, Steelers have hired Brian Flores, great hire. Hopefully he puts together a great staff. The top guy on my list, Kevin Stefanski, former head coach of the Cleveland Browns. Now, I know over the last, week, I guess since he was fired, or even going back to the middle of the season, when folks wanted you to be convinced, you know what? I know the Browns might be the worst organization in all of professional sports, but actually, their coach is the problem. The head coach in Kevin Stefanski, who's a 2-time coach of the year, who was the longest tenured head coach in Cleveland in, I think, 50 years, since the 60s. 60 years, technically. Won your first playoff game since 1994, went to the playoffs the first time since 2002, did it with garbage at quarterback. Won a playoff game. Beat Pittsburgh to do it, by the way. Beat the Steelers 4 years in a row in Cleveland. So yeah, Kevin Stefanski can coach. I hope Shedeur Sanders pans out. He's a limited player as it pertains to arm talent, as it pertains to decision-making at times. He had more picks than touchdowns, or more turnovers than touchdowns. I hope it works out for Shedeur. I'm pulling for Shedeur. Y'all know I love the Sanders family. This is the same Kevin Stefanski that saved Baker Mayfield's career. This is the same Kevin Stefanski that took Joe Flacco off the couch, got the Browns to 11 wins, and had people fooled into thinking they were a Super Bowl contender. He can coach. The idea that the Browns saw him like, you know what, we can actually do better than Kevin Stefanski is baloney, and it's classic Cleveland Browns behavior. So he knows the division. He's a 2-time coach of the year. And most importantly, and this, if nothing else, this will be the one thing that has him above Flores in my mind. He's an offensive guy. He is. You can win with defensive coaches, as I just mentioned. But by and large, the great coaches in this league, the most successful coaches, they tend to be on the offensive side of the football. Andy Reid, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, Sean Payton, go up and down the list. Dave Canales with the Carolina Panthers, look what he did there. Liam Cohen in Jacksonville. By and large, it tends to be the guys on that side of the ball. Why? Because as I've said since 2021 on Carving It Up Live, it's a quarterbacks league. And can you get the most out of the guy that you've got? Kevin Stefanski did in Cleveland, without question. Baker Mayfield was in bust territory. He got him to a playoffs and won a playoff game against Pittsburgh and almost beat Kansas City in Arrowhead in the next round. Did so in Cleveland with that garbage ownership that they've got there with the Haslam family who've destroyed the Browns for years. With bad rosters, really since his first few years in Cleveland, really his entire time in Cleveland, bad rosters in a brutal division with the well-run Steelers, well-run Ravens. The Bengals made a Super Bowl. And in that division, got to the playoffs twice with the Browns? Not even the Jets could do that. The man can coach. There's a reason the second the Browns fired him. Interview. Ravens won him. Giants won him. All these teams. Titans won him. Falcons. Knows the division. Offensive guy. Has actually, he's almost kind of what people say Tomlin is. He's overachieved based on the talent he's got. Tomlin's gotten the doors blown off him in the playoffs for years. Not Stefanski. The Houston win was a blowout, but came close to beating the dang Chiefs in the divisional round back in 2020. The guy can coach. And by the way, there'll be the element of, Cleveland Browns, you think you can do better than Kevin Stefanski? Okay, the team that's owned you for, I don't know, my entire life, the Pittsburgh Steelers, yeah, we'll take them. But we will gladly take a guy who's beaten us in the regular season 4 years in a row in Cleveland, Ohio. We'll take him. Because as far as coordinators are concerned, most of the best ones available are defensive guys. Whether it's Chris Shula, whether it's Jeff Hafley, any of these guys. Again, Brian Flores, I just mentioned, he would be my first pick among coordinators. I guess the best OC on the market is Joe Brady, I guess, which that's kind of a little bit of a risk. If they want to take that risk, okay. He's an offensive guy. He worked with Burrow, worked with Josh Allen. Maybe he can work with whoever the next, hopefully, franchise quarterback in Pittsburgh is. But most importantly, whoever the Steelers hire, you know they'll have job security. Go in saying, you're going to get to build this with all the Steelers' resources and the history. You're going to get to build this from the ground up because we're tearing it down. Gone are the days of, could they win 8, 9, 10? No, we're going to suck for a year and maybe 2. We're going to bottom out to get some draft picks based on our record and based on the assets we get by moving a TJ Watt. You tell me you couldn't get 1 first-round pick for TJ Watt? You're telling me that a team wouldn't give you a 2nd or 3rd rounder for DK Metcalf? Jalen Ramsey couldn't net you a 5th rounder? You couldn't get a player in any of those? If the ultimate goal in Pittsburgh is to return this team to greatness, is to return this team to being a true Super Bowl threat, especially given the fact that the best players in this team are older, you're not doing it with the guys you've got. I'm sorry, you're not. You're not. This roster was put together specifically with the intention of winning 9 or 10 games. And that's what they've done. 3 straight years in a row, 10 wins. Wild card exit. Have higher standards in Pittsburgh. This move tells me, hopefully that's the case. We'll see who they move, they go to. I would go Stefanski or Flores. Those would be my first 2 choices. If they want to choose a wild card, okay. I will give the organization the benefit of the doubt in that regard. So we'll see. Before we get to Aaron Rodgers, Grady Edwards, Josh McDaniels, that's your guy. Hire that guy. No, and by the way, something else that is I was talking about defensive coaches being successful. One of the things that's helping Vrabel, and it's kind of in a reverse way, the way that's helped Andy Reid in Kansas City, having a great coordinator on your roster that was a terrible head coach because, he's not going anywhere. Josh McDaniels bombed with the Broncos, bombed with the Raiders. He's not going anywhere for New England. Great OC. Same case with Steve Spagnuolo in Kansas City, was a terrible head coach with the Rams back in the day. He's gotten some head coaching interviews. He's not leaving Kansas City. So we can get a guy like that, we'll see. Tyler Reddington, shout out to my guy Tyler from the Grid. He says Harbaugh. That feels like it's just a continuation of the Tomlin thing. And by the way, it's an older guy. One thing too about Flores and Stefanski, both pretty young guys. Like, you want to hire a Steelers. The intention, if you're becoming the head coach of the Steelers, is that they're there for the long haul. Not trying to be ageist in any way. That won't be the case for for Harbaugh. Ali Q6M, we're getting Brian Flores. If we do, I got no problem with that whatsoever. Steel City in New York. A lot of us want Harbaugh, but remember, Tomlin was only part of the problem. Rooney Jr. is a bigger problem, maybe potentially. Let's see how this head coaching search works. Let's see what type of guy they'll bring in to set a new culture, a modern NFL culture set on winning by today's standards of the NFL, more of an offensive-minded standard. We'll see what the Rooneys and Orcon potentially decide to do. Steel City in New York says, I will take Flores, truthfully. Okay, I can see that. Grady, Saleh Flores, I don't know his contract status, but look at LaFleur with Green Bay. That's what I would start. Again, I wouldn't be mad if we hired LaFleur, but his game management this year, a lot of Packers fans have been complaining about it for a while, and this is kind of the first year I'm like, oh, man, they kind of have a point. I think they lost 3 games this year in which they had a 10-point lead at halftime. Like, that's including the playoff loss to Chicago. Saleh, again, if that would be probably like the 3rd or 4th option on my list, probably 4th. He bombed with the Jets, but it's also like, yeah, so does everybody. So he deserves a second chance. He's done an amazing job in San Francisco. I would not be mad at that move. If they do decide to go that direction, we'll see. The Jets are certainly worse for having fired him. That's what we do know for sure. Grady, it's an unspoken rule, but Pittsburgh can't go after John Harbaugh. Neither can Baltimore go after Tomlin. Well, not only do I think the Steelers aren't going to go after Harbaugh, the Ravens actually can't go after Tomlin because Tomlin resigned, he has 2 years left in his deal. So this happened with Sean Payton in New Orleans. The Saints traded Sean Payton to Denver. So this is kind of a nice little long-term thing. The Steelers, they could get assets for Tomlin too. He'll almost certainly take a year off. I'm sure he'll get the coaching itch in 2027, and then he can trade him to whoever wants to bring him in for services. Steel City, time to break the unspoken rule? Maybe. Grady. Also, Arthur Smith. And no, I do not want Arthur Smith to be the head coach. Not with the uncreative play calling, not with whatever the heck that was last night from a gameplay perspective. Let's see. If Arthur Smith gets the nod for Maroney Jr., I'll be trading all my Steelers stuff I've accumulated for Lion stuff. I want to do Bill Cowher would recommend. I'd trust that opinion. Remember this, we have an owner who thinks Tomlin is doing a superb job and even extended his contract. Tomlin was not the major issue. Fair enough. Lil Scotty 5772. It's not all on Coach T. He can only do so much. Players have to come and play and execute. A new head coach won't change a thing. We will still be first round exits. Again, if Tomlin's whole MO is motivation, is having guys ready to go, why are they literally never ready to go? I mean, last night it was close. It was 7-6. The Steelers were playing horribly. CJ Stroud, guys, is the only reason that was close for 3 quarters. I mean, let's be honest. Fumbling snaps, the bad interception to Eccles in the red zone when Houston could have went up 14-6 to start the third quarter. If Stroud was played mid quarterback play, that game would have been over at halftime. For long stretches, oh my God, the Steelers are going to win this game, and we do not deserve to. And I'm going to have to give a half-hearted apology to one Aaron Rodgers. Speaking of which, let's talk about Aaron Rodgers. We spent an hour on Tomlin and coaching candidates. Let's talk about Aaron Rodgers. So, man, there's a lot of things to say about last night and this season. So, as I'm sure a lot of you out there know, from YouTube videos during the offseason to when Aaron was signed in June and all throughout this season, I hated the fact that Aaron Rodgers was my team's quarterback. In the simplest terms, from a production standpoint, because he hadn't won a playoff game since 2020. Prior to this year, I hadn't been to the playoffs since 2021. He hadn't been good since 2021. In fact, would you believe that since week 14 of the 2021 season, Aaron Rodgers has thrown for 300 yards one time? One time. Tom Brady has had more 300-yard passing games in that span than Aaron Rodgers. And Brady's been retired for, 3 years. There's also the leadership component, which I will get to in a moment. But let's start with Aaron Rodgers, who, after the game was over, if we have the soundbite, Aaron Rodgers was talking about the things that are going to go through his mind as it pertains to making the final decision for whether this will be the end of his career or not. Take a listen to Aaron Rodgers.
Does that game affect your decision for what to do next year in any way?
No, I mean, I'm not going to make any emotional decisions. Disappointed, obviously, such a fun year, a lot of adversity, but a lot of fun. Been a great year, overall in my life in the last year, and this is, a really good part of that, coming here and being a part of this team. So it's disappointing to be sitting here with the season over.
Now you see what he did against the Texans yesterday. He was nothing short of abysmal. He had no touchdowns, 2 turnovers, both of which were returned for touchdowns. So the Texans defense more than doubled up the Steelers offense, which is unbelievable. He barely completed half his passes. He had 146 yards, a 50 passer rating, and a QBR from 0 to 100 of 14.3. And of course, the Steelers were shut out in the second half. And let's be honest, this was par for the course because Aaron, the whole idea, and a lot of this goes back to blaming Tomlin. The whole idea not that I had, because I was against this from day one. I thought this was a ludicrous move from day one, regardless. The whole idea of bringing Aaron Rodgers to Pittsburgh was not only do we believe we can win 10 or more games and be a playoff team, division champion, all that, but we can beat the good teams. Therefore, we can win in the postseason. Well, against good teams, against playoff teams, Aaron Rodgers was horrible. He played 6 games against playoff teams. He had as many picks as touchdowns, 6-6 TD to INT ratio. He completed 57% of his throws, this is insane, 164 pass yards a game for Aaron Rodgers against playoff teams. The passer rating king had a passer rating below average of 70, a QBR from 0 to 100 against playoff teams of 23, and he was 1-5. And the one win came back in week 3 against New England, and I came out the next day on the show and said, yeah, we should not have won that game. The Patriots had 5 turnovers, 2 at the goal line. We should not have won that game. Patriots fans, y'all know that. Steelers fans, y'all know that. So this Aaron experiment was a failure. I know a lot of people are coming out and saying today, well, you know, for a 42-year-old, he played pretty well. That wasn't the expectation. The expectation was for him to be better than Russell Wilson and Justin Fields and Mitch Trubisky and Mason Rudolph and Kenny Pickett and an old Ben Roethlisberger. And when it was all said and done, the season ended the exact same way with Aaron that it did with those guys, with a blowout loss in the wild card round. And that's just the reality of it. All those teams had bad defenses. All those teams had behind-the-times offensive schemes. Some of those teams had old quarterbacks, i.e. an older Russell Wilson who couldn't move the way that he used to, and Big Ben Roethlisberger couldn't move at all. So there's no excuse for Aaron in this situation. Oh, he was old. Oh, the offense was bad. The offense has been bad. The defense has been either at best mediocre, at worst terrible. So there's no excuses for Aaron Rodgers. But the thing that struck me the most about that playoff game last night, and initially I didn't want to tweet anything, I didn't want to say, maybe I should have, but I want to be, the number one thing I want to be on the show. Yes, I'm opinionated. Yes, I sometimes spat out things and people think I'm crazy, whatever. The number one thing I try and always be on the show is fair. When Aaron Rodgers had good games this year, I gave him credit. Against the Jets, against the Cincinnati Bengals. He played well against Detroit. Like, he had some pretty good games during the season. His bad games were awful. His good games, pretty solid. So I'm going to be fair in my analysis of Aaron and of anybody. But the number one thing I've criticized him for his entire career, and we will do a look at Aaron's career when it is officially over, when he does come out and say, I'm done, my career's over, and he'll be a lock to be in Canton in 5 years. But the number one thing that has plagued this man, he's an atrocious leader. Maybe his fans will come out and say, his fanboys will come out and say, well, I mean, there's a few teammates, they say they love him, and the Steelers teammates that got along with him. Based on my experience from a distance, read the book by Ian O'Connor about Aaron Rodgers, seeing what teammates have said, Aaron is the type of guy that can be, from a distance, from what I can observe, seems like he can be quite charming in a one-on-one interaction. Like, I saw the video of him and the guy Rodgers Realm, who's very popular on Instagram. Like, that was a wholesome moment. That was really cool. Aaron at golf tournaments, chill dude. He's from California. He's from Malibu. He's a chill dude. He's the last guy you want in your corner when you face adversity. He's the last guy. Why do I know that? Well, a number of reasons, but in this game last night, DK Metcalf, he missed the last 2 games due to suspension. He comes back, so he's amped. He's ready to go. The Steelers are getting the ball in his hands early. Aaron Rodgers is. Late first quarter, it's 3-0 Steelers. We're barely into the football game. Aaron throws a pass to the right sideline to DK Metcalf, and he just straight up dropped it. Hey, no other way to say it. He dropped it. He got 1 target the rest of the game. The guy who's the only reason that people thought Pittsburgh's offense could do anything against that vaunted Texans defense. Aaron said, out of principle, he's not getting the football. Just like out of principle, in the season opener in 2022, the first play of Christian Watson's career, deep ball down the right sideline, a perfectly thrown ball, and Christian Watson just had butterfingers and dropped it. He did not get targeted until the 4th quarter. Mercedes Lewis, in Aaron's last playoff game back in 2021, Mercedes Lewis, Packers are up. I think it was like 7-0. He throws Mercedes Lewis the ball, good veteran, well-respected player in the league. And he fumbles. He messed up. He screws up. Hurts the Packers. Doesn't get targeted the rest of the game. Aaron has a tendency, out of principle, out of ego, out of the fact that he is a sorry leader, to tank an offense for his own hubris. We saw it just 2 weeks ago. DK Metcalf out. The division is on the line. Not only is the division on the line against the Cleveland Browns, the 3-12 Cleveland Browns, mind you. If you win this game, that game next week against Baltimore means absolutely nothing. What does that mean? You can sit all your starters and they're fresh for the playoffs. No DK Metcalf. Myles Garrett's going for the sack record. Did you notice what Aaron Rodgers was doing? I mean, he would take the snap. I mean, Aaron got the ball out of his hands quickly this year. Throwaways, when sometimes if he stood there for one more second, maybe could make a play downfield, but he was not going to risk being on Myles Garrett's Hall of Fame tape. NFL players who are in media now watch the film and are like, yeah, he was trying not to. Now, no one's trying to get sacked, but sometimes you just got to eat it. Like you do. Joe Burrow, the play that Garrett sacked him last week for the record, he kind of just had to eat it right there. A throwaway would have been risky because maybe we would have gotten tipped at the line of scrimmage. Sometimes you just got to eat it. You don't have to be Favre with Strahan and take the sack intentionally, basically. Tank the offense out of principle. Didn't throw the ball to Christian Watson because of one drop in the first play of the game back in 2022, week 1 against the Vikings, out of principle. Didn't do it with Mercedes Lewis in a playoff game, out of principle. DK Metcalf, the only guy in the Steelers offense that Houston's like, hey, we got to watch that guy. Make sure number 4 doesn't go off. One mistake, one target the rest of the game. That's all I need to know about Aaron Rodgers. And of course, as is predictable as always, you saw Aaron throughout this game, be it with Arthur Smith, be it with his receivers, his offensive line, yelling at guys, cussing guys out, rolling his eyes, exasperated, slumping the shoulders, hands on hips, not making eye contact. Like it's the same old thing that we have seen throughout this guy's career. When it's not going well, he's not in your corner. And as a cherry on top, last question he's asked his post-game presser, Aaron Rodgers, prickly with the media once again. Here you go.
What did you learn from being with Mike for a season about him?
I've answered that a number of times. I've talked extensively about how I feel about Mike. And I just did in that answer, so thanks.
Just had to throw that little jab in there too. How many times have we said that quarterbacks, politicians, what they both have in common, they are trained. Do not give the media anything. No sound bites, no nothing. The linebacker, the receiver, the running back, the O-lineman, what they can be the class clown, not the quarterback. Brady was excellent with the media. Both Manning brothers were great with the media. Mahomes was great. Dak's great. Aaron Rodgers is one of the worst I've ever seen. Not quarterbacks, NFL players in general with the media. And he's an atrocious leader, which is more important than that. And I found an answer because he was asked about Mike Tomlin. And what starts out as a Tomlin defense turns into this guy's behind the times too. Aaron Rodgers, when discussing Mike Tomlin and his future from last night with the Pittsburgh Steelers. About a minute long. Take a listen to Aaron.
I mean, this league has changed a lot in my 21 years. You know, when you hear conversation about the Mike Tomlins of the world, Matt LaFleur's of the world, those are just two that kind of I've played for. And when I first got in the league, there wouldn't be conversation about whether those guys were on the hot seat. You know, but the way that the league is covered now and the way that there's snap decisions and the validity given to the Twitter experts and all the experts on TV now who make it seem like they know what the hell they're talking about. To me, that's an absolute joke. And for either of those two guys to be on the hot seat is really apropos of where we're at as a society and a league. More than that, though, when you have the right guy and the culture is right, you don't think about making a change. But there's a lot of pressure that comes from the outside, and obviously that sways decisions from time to time, but it's not how I would do things and not how the league used to be.
Yeah, the league wasn't as well run as it is now. There are legit knocks on quarterback development. Tom Brady's talked about that. Aaron, there's been other coaches like, man, quarterbacks aren't quite as refined now as they used to be when they came into the league. Fair criticism. As far as how the NFL does business, it's way better run today than it used to be. It's a safer league. I got my problems with officials. It's better officiated now than it used to be. The catch rule, it's a lot easier for an average fan to determine what's a catch, what's not a catch. Remember the tuck rule game? Like some dumb rules that used to exist in the rule book don't anymore because they didn't make sense. They made the NFL more difficult to watch. Quarterbacks are more protected now than they used to be. They should be. They're the most valuable player on the field. And as for organizations, Yeah, are some teams quick to pull the trigger on moving head coaches sooner than they should? Yeah, I ripped the Cleveland Browns for doing that with Stefanski. But you can also wait too long, which the Steelers did with Mike Tomlin. The Eagles, to a certain degree, did with Andy Reid. And by the way, I think the world of Andy Reid. But sometimes both parties need to go their separate ways. A coach and a franchise, it's not going to be marriage. They're not going to last forever with each other. Sometimes it does end kind of ugly. Even with players, like Tom Brady, a losing record his last season in the NFL. Kobe Bryant was as inefficient as ever his final season in the NBA. Shaq was unplayable his last year in the NBA. Like, this happens. It doesn't last forever. And so Aaron, and by the way, the one thing I caught in there what Aaron said, he was talking about when the guys set the culture. Aaron, don't tell me anything about culture when you're the guy who left the Packers culture for the Jets culture because you wanted more power. I don't want to hear anything about culture from you from here on out, especially when you were the singular toxic force in a locker room for almost your entire career. When you have a Greg Jennings, who is a productive player and a wide receiver in Green Bay, Greg Jennings comes out about, 7-8 years ago and says, yeah, my last year in Green Bay, week 1 against the 49ers. Packers didn't extend my contract. A Niners DB walks up to me like, man, they didn't extend your contract. That's crazy. He's like, man, yeah, you know what it is. Aaron walks over. Y'all can have him. And walks away. Aaron Rodgers, who his whole career, when things aren't going wrong, it's become Michael. I've compared to Michael Scott from The Office with his expressions that he'll have to the camera on the side. He has the presence of mind to always know where the television cameras are. Making it clear to America and the world. Guys, I just want y'all to know that drop, that missed assignment by the offensive line, that penalty, that play call, guys, not my fault. Just want America to know that. Not my fault. Aaron Rodgers is the classic guy who points fingers, not thumbs, and has been his entire career. And so we will do if and when Aaron does decide to retire, and my guess is that he will. If and when Aaron Rodgers does decide to retire, we will do a look over his entire career. Just like I've said we're going to do with Travis Kelce. I like to do that with all-time NFL legends, which, by the way, Aaron indisputably is one. You cannot make a case that the man is not one of the 10 greatest in the history game, that he's not maybe the most gifted thrower of the football ever. That can be true, and also, he was a horrendous leader. We have 20 years documented of this. I don't even think Aaron's a bad guy. I like Aaron as a human more than I like Brett Favre. But he wasn't a good leader. His whole career. Packers, Jets, Steelers, same thing. It's kind of fitting the game into the way that it did last night, right? With pick 6. So, and I want to make this clear, not for Aaron's career, but for his time in Pittsburgh, good riddance. Because as always, and through multiple times this season, particularly against playoff teams,
You done messed up, Aaron!
time and time again. And that's been the story of most of his career. Got a bunch of comments here. What do we got? Let's see. He was talking about Aaron Rodgers. Grady's talking about Aaron Rodgers. I think he's your long-term answer. Next 2 to 3 years, easy. I'm just kidding. I think he met my expectations this year. This year went for you guys exactly how I thought it would. Exactly what the ceiling was, Grady. Like you're 100% right. Like this team could not have been any better than it was. And part of the reason I expected that was because of Aaron's 42. Like that, I'm not expecting to be prime Aaron Rodgers. That's not fair. But if his expectations and the Steelers was be competitive in the playoffs, they failed on that. They did. Grady, I'm glad Aaron Rodgers got to go out on okay terms without at least going to the playoffs. I can't imagine a scenario where he returns next year. I would be stunned. I would be shocked. I really would. Because you got to remember, this past offseason, the Steelers were the only team that wanted him. That was it. The teams that needed quarterbacks, but preferred either we're going to have a bad year at quarterback or we're going to draft one like the Titans or the Raiders or a team like that, the Jets, who obviously moved on from Aaron Rodgers. They said, no, we're good. The Minnesota Vikings, J.J. McCarthy probably needed to sit another year. No, we're good. We're going to go with J.J., not Aaron Rodgers. So here we go. Oh, I think we got an Aaron Rodgers fan in here. We got Andrew Mann 9851. Yep, because after catching 4 passes in a row, he started getting double cover, man. Listen, let's look at, I would like to see the film again because my guess is DK Metcalf was getting double cover, was getting attention the whole game. And by the way, he had multiple one-on-one opportunities going deep down the field, and either Aaron missed him or Aaron got the ball in his hands because he was terrified of getting sacked. Aaron Rodgers is a bad leader now? Yes, he absolutely is. Steel City, New York. Okay, already. Yes, watching the game last night was like playing a Little League game, getting your butt kicked, and your whole family was watching. No question. And Grady says, and he didn't beat Tom Brady in the NFC Championship game out of principle. I really respect that about the guy. Thank you so much, A-Rod. Yeah, Grady's a Patriots and a Panthers fan, but obviously a big Brady guy. And so like it's, again, we'll go over the career, particularly the playoff career of Aaron Rodgers post Super Bowl in 2010, whenever he does decide to officially hang it up, which that may not come till April. I mean, like I could see us being 2 weeks away from the draft and he just randomly goes to McAfee. Guys, I'm done. Like I could see him doing that, which that's his right to make a decision whenever he wants. It's his call. Let's see. Grady. Bryce, you have to admit it was pretty funny when he burned the Jets in a good organization he played with. Oh, yeah, he absolutely did. And he said the only organizations he mentioned were Green Bay and Pittsburgh. Yeah, we weren't able to get that soundbite. He did mention that. Like, it was a privilege to play in Pittsburgh and Green Bay, 2 of the most iconic franchises in the National Football League. He did not mention the Jets. He shouldn't have mentioned the Jets. With that also being said, because we know the Jets culture is absolutely toxic and has been for a long time, mostly almost entirely because of Woody Johnson. Let's not act like Aaron Rodgers wasn't the guy who was going on McAfee and ripping players for other teams. Like he wasn't going out there and accusing people of being on the Epstein list. Like he wasn't, going to the media the way that he was and talking about, I probably heard the red line no less than 7 times when talking about Mike Williams and just letting America know that interception at the end was not his fault. It was Mike Williams' fault against the Buffalo Bills in week 6 last year. So, like, Aaron does deserve, again, the Jets are a terribly run franchise. That can be true. And also, Aaron played part in that distraction. Andrew says, Aaron is a great leader. No, he's really not. And rightfully so. Doesn't like the media. The media tried canceling Rodgers over COVID. He should just give them the finger. Okay. Again, as I've said, go and put that comment back up. I've said this so many times on the show when discussing the COVID issue, and I've been immunized and all that. Do you think Aaron Rodgers was the only player in the NFL, A, to not get vaccinated, and B, tell the world he did not get vaccinated? Kirk Cousins didn't. I'm almost certain Lamar Jackson didn't. Kirk Cousins, Lamar Jackson, pretty beloved guys around the NFL. And that was a different time, and COVID was a very weird period in this country, and there were things that the government got right and things the government got really, really wrong. That's fair to say without question. But that by itself is not the reason people are like, oh, God, screw this guy. Some people, sure. But others, it's like, yeah, he's had issues with coaches for years. He's had issues with teammates for years. He's taken shots at front office who've given him nothing but talent for years. So the COVID issue is not the reason that people turned on Aaron. There's a bunch of players who didn't get the vaccine. Didn't hurt their standing in the NFL. Aaron, this is from Steelers New York. Aaron is right. When we were happy with this team, the last thing we thought about was change at the top. Okay. So I think Aaron rage quit. Andrew rage quit. It's really hard listening to you when every one of your opinions, everyone are separated, but regardless, is like 100% wrong. No, quarterbacks should not be protected. Okay, so you want guys like Aaron to have a shoulder injury like he had in 2017. OMG, this guy sucks. Bye to you as well, Aaron or Andrew. I keep getting your name wrong. But it's again, with the exception of going to the playoffs, the year went exactly the way that I thought it would. And so, listen, I'm not sure I've ever done an hour and a half talking about one team. I think the word Texans came out of my mouth maybe 5 times this entire podcast. And like, it's going to sound like I'm just dismissing them entirely. Listen, that defense, we know the defense is unbelievable. I think they can cause problems for New England. I'll preview that game and the other 3 divisional games. Johnny from the JV show, he's going to be joining me on Friday. Cannot wait to have him on. He's a great content creator. Subscribe to his content, on social media. Does a fantastic job. But we're going to preview those 4 playoff matchups. Houston can give Drake May problems because they can give any quarterback problems with Will Anderson and with Daniil Hunter. And by the way, with some of the guys they have in the middle and Derek Stingley, like they're stacked. Nico Collins, we haven't mentioned this. The Nico Collins concussion, that hurts this team with him being out. And it sucked to see because he got hurt early. I think Schefter or Warren Sharp, somebody reported early in the game that he had, talked about he had a concussion earlier this season. And so in the play where he just goes head first in the turf, it's like, oh gosh, like that's, he's not playing next week if the Texans win. So, Christian Kirk, Xavier Hutchinson, like those guys really did step up. Other than that, man, they're going to have to really rely on Woody Marks, on Nick Chubb from time to time, on running the football the way that they did. But other than that, it's I would be very surprised if New England lost. Let's put it that way. Let's see. Grady, Aaron Rodgers was more talented than Brett Favre. Completely agree with you. Brett Favre was a better player. And I like Rodgers, but he never took accountability for anything, and that was his problem. And he says, this is talking about the ad campaign. He's talking about Andrew in the comment section. Andrew, go eat a Snickers, brother. Trust me, it does wonders. Yeah, I see the commercial. Like, you can't get mad if you're eating a Snickers bar. Listen, there's trolls in the comments from time to time. It happens. But to your previous point, though, he's indisputably more talented than Favre. Favre was the classic. If you had to say gunslinger, Brett Favre's first name that comes to mind. Like, everybody thinks the interceptions were high, the crazy backyard football plays. I mean, Brett Favre once said, how long? I forgot what the exact quote was, but he didn't know what a nickel defense was until he was like a vet in the league. Like, reading defenses was not his specialty. He wasn't exactly Peyton Manning at the line of scrimmage. He was kind of just going off a feel, and he was quite good at it. He was a Hall of Fame quarterback doing what he did. Super Bowl champion, 3 straight MVPs. No one's done that, since. I still would take Aaron. Now, if we're talking playoffs, then I'd probably go Favre. Although Favre did throw 2 game-losing interceptions in an NFC Championship game. So that I haven't looked at their playoff comparisons. I know Favre obviously went to multiple Super Bowls, which Aaron did not. But you could also say, yeah, but Favre had Mike Holmgren, who's one of the most underrated coaches ever in my mind. You can make any of those cases for any of those things. But if you ask me who I would build my franchise around, I'd choose Rodgers just because of his intelligence of line of scrimmage, because he can make all the throws of the books, because he didn't make mistakes. I would go with him in that regard. If you want to take Favre, I can't knock you. But also Aaron does have more MVPs, the longevity. He was more consistently healthy than Favre. So that's because of how Favre played. Like, it's a legit debate. I would give Aaron the edge there, but and Grady says it's really close whether you want to pick Brett or Aaron Rodgers. I have no problem if you want to pick Rodgers. It's razor thin. There's no question about it. And if you want to say Favre's peak was higher than Aaron's peak, you can make, he won 3 straight MVPs. You can make that case. Won a Super Bowl, went to another one the following year. And that's the one thing, too. And again, we're going to save this for when Aaron actually retires, whenever that may be, and kind of a look at his entire career, carving up the context about Aaron's whole career. It's one of the big head scratchers in NFL history among quarterbacks is, man, what was his 3rd year as a starter? Yeah, 3rd year as a starter in the NFL, wins the Super Bowl. And in his 4th year as a starter, he wins his first league MVP. How that he won a Super Bowl in 2010, how he didn't go back the rest of his career, the last 15 years of his career. That is going to be the ones that future NFL fans are going to look back and like, how'd that happen? Dan Marino made a Super Bowl his 2nd year, never went back. NFL's a harsh league sometimes, man. It really, really is. So, Aaron indisputably had a phenomenal career. Like, I'm not trying to bash his resume because it's pretty darn phenomenal. At the same time, on the field, in the locker room, less than things to be desired. And as Grady said, never took accountability for anything. All right. I just spent an hour and a half talking all Pittsburgh Steelers, and this was honestly like a great therapy session for the show. Obviously, plenty of these clips are going to go on social media, YouTube, IG, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, the whole bit. So very, very excited about that, putting stuff on social media. That is all the time I have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by as always. Be sure to catch Carving Up Live on Friday again, because we did technically Wednesday's show today. No show tomorrow. We'll be back on Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, right here on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, X, and likely on Instagram for that stream as well. Gonna have my guy Johnny from the JV show. Check out his content on YouTube. He does great NFL stuff. He'll be joined as a big Bills fan. He'll be coming on the show to preview Bills, Broncos. You got Rams, Bears, Texans, and Patriots. And then you've got 49ers versus Seahawks. We'll preview all 4 of those matchups and talk about whatever else is going on in the world of sports. We'll see you then. Hope everybody has a great week. Please continue to stay safe out there. God bless y'all. Peace out. And as per usual,
You done messed up, Aaron!
Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.